Hey, everybody, welcome to Outlier on Air. This is the podcast where we interview founders, disruptors, and mavens. As always, I'm your host, Ever Gonzalez. On today's episode, we have James Garrett. He is the founder of Brain by Design and a very good friend of mine. James, welcome to the show.
Thanks, man.
We've had you on the show before. We've had great conversations on the show, off the show. We travel together every once in a while. And we've had some of the best discussions as we're in the car or in the hotel or anywhere, right, out to lunch. And so we're always talking about bringing a portable mic to record all of our conversations, right? And so I just kind of wanted to bring you back on here for a couple reasons. I think you have a lot of knowledge, a lot of great insight into the brain and into the different things that you're doing. So I thought I'd get you back in here and have you share your thoughts with our audience. But on top of that, you recently posted a Facebook post, I guess, about something that was kind of caught me off guard and was really, really interesting about your plans for 2019. And I want to go deep into your post and the things that you're talking about there. But before we do that, for those that don't know who you are, let's give them a 2-minute kind of glimpse as to who you are, what you do. Those of you that have been following us for a while now know James because he's been on the show before. Those of you that have been on the out to our events know James. You've seen him at Founders Weekend. You've seen him at the Outlier Podcast Festival, and so you know that he's the real deal. So James, give us a 2-minute kind of background.
Sure, yeah, you bet. So my real passion is getting brain science out of the labs and into people's lives. I spent a number of years doing research, sort of training to become a scientist. I thought that's what I was going to become for a lot of years, and studied really with some of the best psychologists in the world, and got a lot of good. They really trained the way I think, I guess, and then I both my wife and I we're so non-traditionalist, I guess, we decided to jump off that very predictable kind of PhD path, and we went abroad. So we spent 2 years as Peace Corps volunteers in Jordan, in the country of Jordan, the Middle East. And then we spent 4 additional years after that building a nonprofit organization called Think Unlimited. So we were really building brain-based content for young people in the Middle East. One way to think of it is like a positive psychology curriculum. Creativity, innovation, the mindsets and skill sets of sort of innovators and people who are outgoing and building things in the world. Those are the types of experiential learning we were trying to give the kids we were working with. So that was an amazing experience. We came home summer 2015, and ever since then I've been building what's my company called Brain by Design. So I what I'm really passionate about is sort of, again, so the brain science can be kind of overwhelming a little bit. People don't quite know where to start. And so I'm sort of a brain science curator where I take this complex, I do all the reading and all the kind of, I'm the one who geeks out for years on this stuff, and then distills it into easy, actionable, usable, helpful ways to incorporate it into your life.
Which is what I like. That's exactly what you just mentioned. Everybody's interested in the brain, how it works, how we can use it to our advantage, those type of things, how we can basically hack the brain. But, right, where would I start? I have no idea.
Yeah.
All right, I don't want to read all those big old thick books about, using words that I don't understand or recognize. But here you come along. You understand those things. You're breaking it down for us to be able to kind of, you're not dumbing it down. You're just making it easier for us to understand and kind of get through. And so we've had a lot of great discussions about it. And so now, with that in mind, right, you are this person that understands the science behind a lot of these things that has to do with the brain. Like I mentioned, you posted something on Facebook that kind of caught my eye. You talked, it was a long post. You were talking about 2019, the things that you want to accomplish, things that you want to change. And you got a little bit personal there too, which is great, right? We've had a lot of great personal conversations, but you kind of shared it with the world. And I want to talk about Deep Change Project, what it is, what you're trying to accomplish, and all of the things that are in it so that we can kind of help our audience understand where you're coming from and how it can benefit their lives as well.
Yeah. So the Deep Change Project, which really has sort of been fully, unintentionally been working on it for the last 15 years. I didn't quite know what I was working toward, I guess. But in kind of a focused effort in the last 2 or 3. But what I started to realize is it's one thing to really get good at the science. It's really one thing to kind of understand the science. And inevitably, I'm doing all these little micro experiments in my own life, all the time. But I'm not actually sharing those I'm not putting those out there for other people to see what I'm doing. So I'm digesting just mountains of science all the time in terms of what can actually help me. And I'm doing all these little micro experiments, but I'm not really doing it systematically. I'm sort of just playing around and seeing what works and what sticks. And so one of the things I've started to realize is I'm not really telling my own story.
Sure. Which is tough.
Yeah. And it's very easy to hide behind the science.
Absolutely.
You can kind of become very knowledgeable in something, and in so doing, you can talk just about those things as opposed to how it actually works in your life.
Yeah.
And that's a different type of story. It's a different type of narrative, and frankly, I think it's what's needed in the brain tech and neurotech space, which is one of the inventions I think we'll dive into. But it is something that for years I've resisted. I'm not one of these people who's sort of like overly active on social media, but it's something that I feel like I'm ready for. And once this all came together for me, it was like, oh, I can't not do this.
Good. It's funny because we've had discussions about this before where I think you and I are similar with the things that we want to put out on social media, right? They're great people that share everything, which is awesome, right? Yeah. I mean, the good, the bad, and the ugly of their lives and their entrepreneurial journey or things like that. Sure. And it's great. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. I have a hard time with that, and I'm trying to kind of let more people into my world online. Mm-hmm. You are starting to do that, and I can imagine it must be tough, right? What are the benefits, though? Right? I mean, I'm going to learn a little bit more about you and this whole process, but I mean, that's a scary, slippery slope, don't you think?
Yeah. Well, the way I see it, yeah, it is, and it does feel. The actual picture that I posted was this. I bought this bracelet with this little thing that says courage. I'm actually wearing it right now.
Nice.
Right there.
Nice.
But I bought it because I know that courage or fearlessness is sort of something that for me has been one of these things that I know if I'm going to kind of reach the next level for myself, I know I need to be better at that. It's something that I know I need to work on. Anyway, I ran into this company who sells these little things, and I bought it, and I knew that was the word I needed to do. And anyway, I put that together with the post because it will be an act of sort of vulnerability and openness, kind of transparency, right? Again, it's one thing to and academics are very good at this, being expert at their sort of domain, but not necessarily thinking or being willing to be vulnerable about, okay, but what does it look like in your life? And so, again, so what this will practically look like in 2019, Deep Change Project, in essence, is my attempt over the period of a year to fundamentally change my nature. So there's this radical idea that the science suggests that you can actually change human nature.
Sure.
And those words both frighten me and they blow my mind with excitement and interest and intrigue. I can't stop thinking about that concept. And so for me, it's sort of like something that bold, that big. It's like I'm not likely to be able to get anyone, I'm not likely to be able to convince anyone to do this if I'm not doing it first. Sure. If I'm not sort of stepping out and saying, look, there's all this emerging brain tech space. There's mindfulness. There's sort of this emerging field of kind of science help instead of self-help. How do you put that all together? How do you actually, in a year of, right, kind of moving the needle on changing or growth or development, this sort of accelerated version of becoming the best version of yourself? it's sort of like what we lack for is people stepping out and doing that. And again, in this space for sure. In other spaces, I think in biohacking and other places, I think people have really done that. In brain hacking, we really haven't.
Yeah.
Not systematically, not in a way that distills it, not in a way that simplifies it. You know, it's sort of like, this is one way to think of it, I guess, is like, nobody's been the Tim Ferriss of brain hacking, you know, and it's a needed thing because it will be a gnarly future to navigate.
No doubt.
Because there's all sorts of implications. It's sort of like we finally we've really discovered the greatest secret of the brain in the last, you know, in the last 20 to 30 years. We've really unpacked this secret, and that is that your brain is fundamentally alterable, fundamentally changeable. Scientists call this neuroplasticity. So basically, it means that our brains are not, you know, we're not born with a certain amount of intelligence. We're not born with a certain, you know, we have. You know, at best, we have certain predispositions, tendencies, but we have a lot of control over who we become. So when people say, you know, people can't change or they don't change, that's based on our experience of watching each other fall into patterns or habits of being or ways of our personalities or other things. It has nothing to do with the science. It has everything to do with experience. And there's nothing wrong with that experience. Of course, you know, these adages like you can't teach an old dog new tricks, they're very apt if you're only looking at experience. But if you're looking at the science,
it's possible.
It's not only possible, it's learnable.
Yeah.
So it's sort of like, it's not that we don't change because we can't change. It's that we don't change because we're not good at change. It's actually a skill set.
It's funny. I enjoyed your post so much that I showed my wife, right? And then so she was like, "What is he talking about? He's one of the nicest guys I've ever met. He's one of the smartest guys I've ever met, right? What do you mean the big change? Is this like a New Year's resolution type of stuff?" And I was like, "No, I think he's going deeper." And so, right. We can get better. It's not like you're trying to change. I mean, I guess it's possible. You're not trying to change bad habits, a bad part of who you are. You're taking what you have, which is good and well, like most of us, and you're just trying to expand upon it, right? You're trying to make it better, bigger, stronger, smarter, whatever it is that you're trying to do in your life. How is this different from New Year's resolutions?
Yeah, great question. Great question.
Obviously, I feel, you know, it's a kind of a tongue-in-cheek type of question because it's obviously a lot deeper than that. Explain to us how it's deeper than that.
So I think of the brain as sort of coming with default operating systems.
Okay, great.
Or default programs. Primarily, the vast majority of these programs are there to keep us safe, to literally keep us alive. So, and I think of these as like a 1.0 system, right? Fear, anger. A lot of them have to do with our emotional states, actually. Anger, frustration, anxiety, like these really powerful negative emotions we all know and feel, and, you know, they get us in trouble occasionally, that sort of thing, right? So one of the biggest ones is stress, actually, especially in modern life, because stress is when you look at what we need today in 2018, we're not talking about, you know, 10,000 years ago. We're talking about 2018. Stress is a pretty maladaptive response to negative things that happen in your life, or you know, worrying and ruminating is actually, frankly, just a fairly unproductive activity for a lot of reasons. It's not that it's not understandable. Of course, we all worry. We all get nervous.
People wasted years of their lives doing that, right?
That's right.
Worrying, not progressing. Yeah,
that's right. So the brain comes with all these sort of hardwired, or not hardwired, but sort of default, I guess, ways of being. And again, they're primarily there to keep you alive, and they do a great job. There's actually, so one way to think of this 1.0 system, there's actually nothing wrong with it. It's great.
Yeah.
I mean, we're all here.
Yeah.
We're still breathing. You know, we basically have good lives. But the question is, does the brain have this capacity to supersede and upgrade to a 2.0 operating system?
And you're saying yes.
And I'm saying yes. So the first 2 months, actually, in January and February, what I'll be working on is moving from stress, really dialing down the stress in my life. And we can get into what that means and how I'm going to do that. And really increasing mindfulness and calm. So we know that brains perform at peak when they're calm. We know that creativity flourishes. We know that focus and productivity flourish. Like Google and all these companies, what they're designing for is actually calm. They're not designing for competition. They're not designing for intensity. They're not designing for performance per se, although that's a natural outproduct of calm. They're actually designing for calm. Mm-hmm. And what you find is when people are in calm states of mind, generally speaking, they learn better, they're more creative, they're more productive, they manage their energy better, so they don't burn out by 2 or 3 p.m. and start surfing Facebook. They can actually like put in like a rock solid 8 hours or whatever that workday looks like for you.
See, it's funny that's exactly why, right? And I think we mentioned it. You've been to our conferences and our festivals. You've presented 2 or 3 different times, maybe more than that. And every single time that you do, people come out of there singing your praises, right? Because I think we all kind of feel that there's more than we can do with the brain and understanding how to navigate through it. You just kind of put it in words and in a way that's easily understandable, and it kind of pumps us up and gives us hope that we can kind of work through it and work in a calm state. It's things that we don't think about on a regular basis, at least most of us. But here you are coming in and putting it down in a way that we can understand. And so I think, I know that your breakout sessions, your keynotes at my events have been one of the most popular ones that we have, just because so many people are interested in this. I don't think your message is something that people are going to have a hard time with or anything like that. I think the problem that you might face is getting this out to the world, getting this out to the masses, right? Telling and talking to as many people as possible. This whole process, you're going to be documenting your journey. Yeah. That's going to bring more people in. So let's talk about what this is actually going to look like January 1st of 2019 and moving forward. And you have several different segments that you're going to be focusing on a month or 2 at a time. So we have all the time in the world. And so let's get into it.
Okay. Yeah, no, I do have to, you mentioned the word hope. So I just wanted to say one thing about hope. Sharon Bagley, brilliant science writer, writes a lot about neuroplasticity. She calls neuroplasticity the hopeful science. Nice. Because it is fundamentally, that's the emotion that it evokes. When you start realizing, whoa, I could reinvent myself from the inside out to become fundamentally like a different, better version of myself, that I have that power that knit into my biology. I'm fundamentally changeable, like first principles of neurons, right? They're fundamental. You'll wake up with a different brain tomorrow than you had today. Your brain is changing that rapidly. Every day, just in your hippocampus, they call this neurogenesis. It's one aspect of sort of neuroplasticity, or the way the brain changes. Neurogenesis is the birth of new neurons. In your hippocampus alone, you're giving birth to 500 to 1,000 neurons between the ages of 57 to 72.
Really?
They know. So again, every study, this was done with sort of retirees, and we didn't know that the brain was giving birth to new neurons well into old age. That's the neurogenesis part. And neuroplasticity happens in a number of different ways. But just your brain is literally like this pulsing thing that's constantly changing. And the question is, can you get in the driver's seat of that process? Can you become the architect of your own brain? One of the
if you can dial that in, how awesome would that be? How amazing would your life be if you can even get a fraction of control?
Yeah.
Right? And here you are trying to help us be able to do so. You have a Facebook page that you've started, right? That's going to kind of, again, document the journey, but you're going to put information on there, content on there that's going to help us in our own journey as well. We're going to have links to it at the end of the show, but keep going.
Yeah, well, I think of it as the brain is so powerful You've got 100 billion neurons in your brain, same number of stars in the Milky Way galaxy. Every single neurons look like a tree. They're not like a circle, the way we think of like cells in biology class, right? They look like a tree turned sideways. Tons of branches, 5 to 10,000 branches on one end, big long trunk in the middle, and then branches out the other end. Every single one of those branches is a potential connection point to a neighboring neuron. That's how neurons communicate and talk to each other. So every single neuron, you've got 100 billion of them, has 5 to 10,000 connections to other neurons. The complexity of our brains is like, it's the most complex thing in the known universe, actually. So it's a beautiful, to think of the capacity, way I think of it is we don't actually know what we're driving. We're not actually good at understanding ourselves. One of the metaphors I use a lot is, we all fly on airplanes. We all turn right instead of left when we go to our seats. But imagine turning left and getting to the cockpit of the plane. Most of us aren't trained pilots. But if you sat in the cockpit and pushed enough buttons and pulled enough levers, you might be able to get it to get in reverse and putter around the tarmac a little bit. But there's no way you're flying that thing. It's not because the machine isn't powerful. It's because you're not trained to fly it.
And that's the scary part, right? What if we could figure it out, right? The power that's behind that, right? Talking about the plane, but basically your brain, right? This is what amazes me and scares me a little bit too, right? I mean, I don't know if it's unlimited, but there's certainly much more that we can do with our brains. And what would our lives look like if we can kind of put it all together and sit in the driver's seat?
Yeah,
that's what you're trying to figure out.
That's really what this journey is about in 2019. It's me taking neuroplasticity deadly serious. So January and February. So what I'm doing is I'm gonna break out the journey, and it's really a journey, is how I'm thinking of it. I'll break it out into 2-month chunks, January and February, March and April, all the way around the calendar year. And I'm going to be working on moving from a 1.0 operating system in my own brain, and these are things that matter to me. It's not necessarily everyone's path. 1.0 to a 2.0 operating system. That's the sort of overarching kind of framework. In January and February, this will look like moving from stress to mindfulness. In March and April, it will look like moving from distraction to focus. In May and June, it will look like moving from negativity to positivity. And I'll unpack these in a sec. July and August, from logical brain, which a lot of us are fairly good at, to creative. September to October, from fearful to fearless. This one's the one that scares me the most.
Yeah. Nice.
November and December, from self-oriented to other-oriented.
So again, mindfulness, focus, positivity, creativity, fearlessness, connection. Yeah. It's about really fundamentally getting out. The fundamental problem of human nature is we're all stuck inside of our own subjectivity. We're all stuck inside of our own experience. Yeah. And so being able to transcend that, getting good at like radical empathy, in my mind, that's why it's last. It's actually, I think, one of the hardest things to do. If I can even inch toward that a little bit, I think it'll be, a pretty exciting experience. So starting with January and February, right? We touched on this a little bit. Stress is going up in the world. Anxiety is increasing. Whatever data you're looking at. Yeah. We live in an anxious world right now. Anxiety and stress are sort of two words for the same thing. It depends how they're often situationally defined. But by and large, what's happening in your body is your body's going into a fight or flight response chronically, for long periods of time. We know that this ultimately leads to inflammation, heart disease, a whole host of negative health outcomes, for one.
But on the brain side, it also leads to the second your body gets stressed, the first thing to go offline is your prefrontal cortex, your problem-solving center. This is where executive function happens. This is why...
Which is the worst thing that can possibly happen at that moment, I'm assuming, right?
Well, that's right. This is why when people go up, they're about to go on stage,
Yeah.
and your brain is trying to keep you safe, activates a stress response, and you go up there and you literally lose your words.
Sure.
Because you're not thinking clearly.
Sure.
All your executive function just went boom, offline. That's what I mean by 1.0 system, right? That was a fairly unhelpful response. What you needed is your full brain's capacity. You need to be in flow. You need to be in the moment. You actually need to be the best version of that part of you. And when stress arises, that part of you literally disappears. So again, it's not that stress doesn't have its function. It does. It's about keeping us safe. It's that most of us are already safe. And so the function it ends up serving is holding us back.
You're diving in 2 full months of this, right? Again, walk us through those that are going to be a part of this journey. We're going to have our own journey. What is again those 2 months focusing on mindfulness? What can we expect from you? I mean, is this going to be? Are you going to be writing about it? Are you going to be podcasting about it? Right? How are we going to interact with you as you're going through your journey?
So every day I'll be doing a daily video.
It's a big deal.
Yeah.
That's a big deal for you.
Yeah, it is
for
a big
most
deal
people.
For me.
Yeah.
I'll be doing, starting January 1st, I'll be doing a daily video. I may take the weekends off, but at least Monday through Friday, I'll for sure be doing a daily video. And I'll be blogging. I'll be doing 1 blog post a week. So all this stuff I'll be posting in that Facebook group. That's really the central place to be. But yeah, I'll literally be giving you a complete transparent window into what's going on for me, good, bad, and ugly. Right? It's not all going to be pretty.
I love it.
But my hope is that in unpacking, in demystifying my journey, you can see some clarity to create your own. Because again, it's not that everybody should be working on the same things. I don't believe that. I think everybody creates their own journey. But I think in stepping out and doing this, I'll be doing things like testing the latest neurotech, for example. So I'm friends with the CEO of Apollo Neuroscience up in Pittsburgh, a really interesting company. They're building a wearable right now that measures heart rate variability. So one of the best ways to measure stress is through these biomarkers. So one indicator of stress is when you breathe in, your heart speeds up a little bit. When you breathe out, it slows down a little bit. It's really interesting. Actually, if you watch it in real time, you can see it speeding up and slowing down. It's very subtle, but you can see it. That means you're calm. Like if your heart rate variability is high, that's a good thing. That means you're in a good state of mind. When your heart rate starts getting really steady and consistent, that means you're stressed. So anyway, so this wearable, you can wear it on your wrist or your ankle. It's consistently measuring your heart rate variability, and we'll start noticing as soon as you begin to get stressed. You probably can't feel it yet, but the device can notice it. Yeah. And then once that happens, it will activate a little bit of a vibration and some sound frequency, which stimulates the nerves and the bones that activate the vagus nerve, activate a parasympathetic calming response in the body, and literally neutralize your stress before it even happens.
So it snaps you out of it. It wakes you up a little bit.
That's right. Yeah, and it's not like these things aren't terribly invasive. It really feels like if you've ever felt a cat purring, like next to your leg or something, that's actually about what it feels like. So this is something you can just wear continuously, monitoring your biology, which is deeply connected to what's happening in your brain.
Sure.
And then it will aid you or nudge you to becoming a calmer person, right? And again, this is just one example of the type of thing I'll be testing and trying. I'll probably be using Vital Neuro's technology that I'm really familiar with, which is really amazing. I find it to be about twice as powerful as meditation. Muse, Spire, a lot of these folks, a lot of the neurotech right now is about sort of deepening the already positive effects of meditation. So I'll be using all of those trialing and just literally just giving my experience about what's working, what's not, what I think about these things. But that's just scratching the surface, right? Every week I'll be sort of biting off a different aspect of how to reduce stress and how to increase mindfulness. I do all sorts of weird things, like I belly breathe in the car.
Nice.
So whenever I'm driving, I literally will stick my hand on my stomach and breathe into where my hand is. That might sound really weird. It's very subtle, but one of the times where you get most stress is in traffic. Again, completely useless kind of activity because it's not helping us get anywhere any faster. And when we get to work, we're literally burned through our mental batteries to such an extent that we just have less willpower in the tank to actually stay focused that day. And we've used it up on a useless activity, which is getting stressed during traffic. So again, when you belly breathe during your car ride, you're training your brain to respond to a frustrating situation with calm. And what you're trying to do is create an automatic response to frustration where that's mindful. That's literally like a buffer. Like you're acting from a place of, again, intention. You're in the driver's seat of that process so that you don't get swept up in the negativity of the frustration, the anger, the anxiety about being late for the meeting or whatever it is.
What are some of your concerns about this, right? So year commitment, that's a big deal. Yeah. You kind of opening up and letting the world in is a big deal. What are some of the other concerns that you have about this, about what 2019 is going to look like for you and your family?
So on a very practical level, I'm a little worried about being that sort of on social media because I've never done that.
It's a real thing, for sure.
It's a real thing, right? And I've actually taken a lot of precautions to really guard my time because my attention is the thing I value most.
Great, I love it.
And so I'm really, I'm worried about sort of getting pulled into always being on social media. I'm going to have to be in some sense, but moving on to March and April, right? This is about focus and distraction. So I'm going to have to square that circle about how to do that, but not let it overwhelm me.
It can get overwhelming, and it can, lead to more stress and more unhappiness, right? So that's something you have to kind of navigate through. The wife, what does she think about this?
She's very supportive.
Is she?
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, she actually. It's funny, your spouse, it's sort of like she's been knowing that I've been kind of misaligned for, a number of years. I'm close, but I'm not quite on it, on kind of where I know I want to go. And she can see pretty clearly that I finally finally hit what I really am being kind of called to do.
So the end of 2019, I mean, what's next? Are you even worried about that at this point?
Gosh, that's a really good question. Yeah.
This doesn't sound like it's a money maker project for you. It doesn't sound like this is something that, at the end of it, you're going to sell us on something, which is possible, but which is great too. But this, to me, and the reason I wanted to have you on here was because it felt like it was very personal. And it was more of a mission for you than a money making opportunity for you and Brain by Design and the things that you're doing on the side as well.
Right. Yeah. For me, this is about pushing the boundary of what's possible. Literally being kind of the brain hacking guinea pig to see what I can do in my own brain. It's like a science experiment of a single person, right? Because I've always believed that human potential is vastly bigger than we usually live. But the question is, how do you access it? How do you tap into it? How do you measure it? How do you see progress? We know that progress is, if you can see visual progress, it's one of the deepest sources of motivation. It's what keeps us going.
Yeah.
But most of our mental or emotional or sort of inner life progress, like our growth, the whole industry of personal growth and development or self-help.
It's easy with losing weight. You can see it. It's easy with, lifting weights. You can see it. With this, it's a little bit harder.
It's a little bit harder, but that's changing.
Mm-hmm.
And neurotech is having a big say in this. You can now start looking at your QEEG, your quantitative electroencephalogram, which is a sort of a baseline measure of your electrical activity in your brain, and start seeing that certain regions of the brain are actually getting more strong, right, over time. So we know fMRI, big fancy science words, functional magnetic resonance imaging, just the brain scanners that basically we can watch a video of your brain while it's working. So it's like a CAT scanner, right? They're the big, in hospitals, the big things, and you sort of slide into them, big scanner. They're wildly expensive, multi-million-dollar machines, very impractical to sort of incorporate in normal life. But there's actually a company that's working on this right now, taking fMRI mobile. Because if you can look inside your own brain, your brain is changing constantly, but if you can't see it, it's hard. It doesn't create that positive feedback loop to actually keep that momentum going, right? The brain is, when it comes to human motivation, momentum is everything. Momentum is everything. It's just like the principle of inertia. Like an object in motion stays in motion. If you can get moving on something into a change process and stay in that, it's dynamite, man. There's something about it. And the same thing is true with negative sort of downward spirals, right? This is the brain loops is one way to think of it. This is why rumination leads to depression, right? It's also why positive emotions lead to flourishing, as Barbara Fredrickson has showed. So the same thing is true if we can start sort of visually unpacking our progress. Suddenly, like, motivation isn't a problem anymore. Because you're like, oh, I sat down to do a 10-minute meditation, and I literally watched my neurons grow new dendrites, new connections to other neurons, and add an extra layer of myelin sheath, which is like the sort of power of the pathways, the thickness of the pathways, the strength of the pathways. I actually saw that just happen. That's freaking awesome. And suddenly it's like, wow, every effort I have has a feedback that actually then remotivates me to keep at it, as opposed to like, well, I feel like I'm kind of a better person, which there's nothing wrong with that kind of subjective evaluation. Of course, we'll all do that. And of course, I'll be doing that throughout the year, no question. But it's just one source of measurement, and brain tech is really unpacking these deeper ways to measure.
People that are listening that have been to your, when you give these keynotes or breakout sessions that have interacted with you on a regular basis, we're all in. We're interested, right? We're trying to figure out how to better ourselves, our brain, how to take control, like we talked about here. How do we get started, though? Yeah. Right? Obviously, we're going to follow your journey. For us personally, what can we do today to start down that path?
I like to break things down into threes because I think the brain remembers better in threes than any other number. The first thing I would say is REM, REM, just like the REM sleep as an acronym. Mm-hmm. R stands for reading, E stands for exercise, M stands for meditation. This stuff for me is foundational. It really is. Like, if you're meditating 10 minutes a day, and it really doesn't require more than about 10 minutes a day. I mean, certainly you can up the level, but like as a baseline, if you want to like take on meditation and really start doing it, download Headspace or Calm or one of these other apps and try it for 10 minutes a day. And you'll be shocked over time at how much more cognitive control you have, how much more control you have over your emotions, how much better your relationships get. Exercise, we know if you're doing high intensity interval training, really requires only about 20 minutes a day. This is Gretchen Reynolds. She's got a book called The First 20 Minutes. Brilliant explanation of how this works. And reading for me, reading has been the foundation of the last 3.5 years of my life. When we got home from Jordan, I decided, and this was a crazy, crazy goal at the time, but I decided I'm going to start reading a book a week.
A week?
Yeah. Yeah, and I didn't think I could do it, actually. I thought, well, no, that's insane. So we got home, and I hadn't been, so part of the problem, like I came from a reading desert in my own life, right? I hadn't been reading very much. I've been reading like a couple books a year, in the last 3 to 6 years before that time. So I was really hungry because I love, like literally, I love reading nonfiction more than anything else in my life. That's like the thing I would love to do more than anything else. And so I was starved and wanting this really badly. So I decided to take on this goal. And I remember the first week I finished it was about 12:30 a.m. I was sitting there, I read the last page, is The Willpower Instinct by Kelly McGonigal. I read the last page on Sunday night, and I did it in 7 days. And I put the book down and I said, whoa, I just read a book in a week. Let's do it every week.
Yeah.
Suddenly my self-efficacy, that confidence that drives performance or sort of commitment to something, suddenly my self-efficacy goes, just rockets through the roof. And I'm like, no, this is happening. This is actually happening. And pretty much for the last 3.5 years, I've done it. I mean, on average, I've read a book about every 10.5 days is what it's sort of broken down as. Every once in a while, a book's too long to read in a week. You got to read in 2 weeks. Sure. Sometimes you have vacations, that sort of thing. But on average, that one habit has really changed my life. And they're now finding that reading is connected with these other forms of well-being. There's just an article that just came out in the New Yorker, I think, in this last issue about reading, the sort of positive, very similar to the effects of meditation, actually, that having a regular practice of reading starts having on your well-being. But if you wanted to read a book every 2 weeks,
doable. More doable, yeah.
More doable. I think a book a week still it's kind of insane. It's ends up being anywhere from 25
I would put too much pressure on myself to get it done and not enjoy the process, the journey.
Yeah. I do think a book every 2 weeks is actually a very achievable goal for most people. It ends up being anywhere from 15 to 17 pages a day. If you block out, some chunk of time, whether it's 30 minutes in the morning or whatever, and then knock out. That's what I always do. I always knock out an hour of reading in the morning, and then I'll do a little bit kind of midday and maybe at the end of the day. But if you read that one book every 2 weeks and you really got into a rhythm of it, you really don't need to read. On average, people read a page it takes them about 2 minutes to get through a page. So 30 minutes. So I think of REM as reading, exercise, and meditation for 10 minutes, exercise for 20 minutes, reading for 30 minutes. That's an hour a day.
Again, doable.
And that is what will create a foundation to then start building on top of, right? So if people can set aside if people can be committed enough to their own change journey to focus on it an hour a day, I would say, no, you're in the game.
Yeah. And it's one of those things that, again, starting is the hardest part, I think.
Sure.
Once you're in the rhythm, then it gets easier, right? It's the snowball effect, like with everything else we do. When we have you back on the show at the end of 2019, what are we going to be talking about?
Wow.
This James that I don't even recognize anymore.
Yeah. I really believe that I'm going to do just this ridiculous amount of learning. I can't imagine that I won't end 2019 having learned things that I can't even foresee right now. Maybe I will have quit social media by that point. I don't know. Probably not, but maybe. Yeah. Maybe I will have instituted, from the sort of mundane to I'll be taking a bath every night as sort of my nightly ritual to I don't even know, right? But I do think I will. I'm hoping, like my internal goals, I'm hoping to lose the fear of what other people think of me. In that month of fearlessness, right? I think that's something we all struggle with, is the fear of judgment of others. Sure. I'm hoping to just
Which, by the way, nobody cares.
Yeah, nobody actually cares.
Nobody cares. Nobody's paying that much attention to us. Why not?
But why not just like walk into that truth, right?
That's right.
Yeah, no. So I'm hoping that's a big one. I want to like systematically erase that from my brain. I want to be able to tap into states of flow regularly and consistently so that I can access the deepest creative parts of my brain. I want to what I want to become, I want to be able to demonstrate both in the data that I'm collecting on myself and in the lived experience of me being me, and hopefully in the lived experience of you interacting with me, that in each of those areas, right? Mindfulness, focus, positivity, creativity, fearlessness, and connection, that you experience me and I experience me as, no, those are the new default settings. That's the predominant state. I just kind of live in a state of joy.
Yeah.
That's my predominant emotion.
Do you realize that if done right, this could be a big deal for a lot of people? This could be a new way of living, because we're going to see it. Right? A year is not that long. Right? We can kind of, I feel, again, if done right, we're going to be looking back at this project and learn so much from it. And I think other people are going to take notice and expand on it and do good things, right? You're a guinea pig. You're putting it together.
Yeah. Yeah.
This could be awesome.
Thank you.
This is going to be awesome, right? I mean, literally, this can change people's lives.
Yeah.
Other intellectuals, other researchers, all these people can look back and say, look at this year, look at James and where he started, what he accomplished. That worked. That maybe didn't work. Maybe if we tweak this, right? I mean, this can be the start of a brand new field. Maybe not field because it's already out there, but
like a skill set.
Like a skill set.
Like
Absolutely.
people master the skill set
Absolutely.
of self-directed neuroplasticity.
Nobody's doing it like this. Nobody that I know of is doing it like this.
Mm-hmm.
Again, this can be a big deal, and we wish you nothing but success.
Thank you.
Your success is going to be our success because we're going to see it in action. In everything that we interact with you, we're going to see what's working, what's not working, and obviously, it's going to be able to help our lives if we apply it as well.
Thank you.
This is a big deal. I'm excited about it. Again, seeing that post kind of got me excited. It's one of those things that I think we all know that we should focus inward a little bit more, right? We're so busy with the world and what's coming at us that I personally have a hard time sitting quietly by myself in my own thoughts, right? I get overwhelmed. I get a little bit creeped out. I get, right, this whole thing. But I know that I need to do that, and hanging out with you reminds me that I need to do that. And you have so much knowledge and information that kind of helps me in that journey that I'm very, very excited about this year. We're going to be following you every step of the way. So for those that are interested, where can we find you? Tell us about where we can find Deep Challenge Project online, all that good stuff.
Yeah, so it's a Facebook group. If you just search Deep Change Project on Facebook, it should pop up. There's there, or obviously a Facebook page, just Brain by Design, so that can reroute you to the Facebook page, and then I'll have it also on my website, which is just brainbydesign.com.
Any parting words of wisdom for those that are trying to hack the brain, those that are trying to kind of take control of all of this? REM, big deal, right? I loved it. Anything else?
I would just say, even if you doubt that, we often think of ourselves as the exception. Oh yeah, so like these people doing these things, but I don't know, maybe I'm a little different.
Yeah.
Every brain has this capacity. Every brain has the deep potential for change. It's really a question of getting good at the skill of directing that change process, of literally getting good at the skill of rewiring your own brain. So give yourself a chance. Like, walk into your possibility. Like, walk into your potential. For me, this is the deepest opportunity really all of us have is to sort of walk into what we're actually capable of and get in the driver's seat of that process and see where the journey takes you.
The reason that I like this so much, right, and we've talked about this, I have a hard time with like motivational coaches or these posts on Facebook, live your life, or that kind of stuff.
Sure.
It's fluff, right? Great, awesome, but it's fluff, right? What can I possibly do? There's science behind the things that you're talking about. There's a lot of research that you've done behind all of these things that you're talking about. It's not fluff. It's not you're not telling me to live my best life, right? You're showing me how to do it. And it's one of those things that we're going to succeed together, right? At the end of 2019, no doubt that I want to have you back on here, and I want to talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly of 2019 for you, what worked, what didn't work, and then kind of just dissect what happened to you and what happened to the rest of us that were following along. And so, again, 2019 is going to be an important year for you, for us, and we're looking forward to the journey, man. We wish you nothing but success.
I really do think of it as succeeding together, right? Because I really do need to be learning as much from everybody else who's part of the community. I really see this as a collective effort because nobody's cracked the code on this. So as much as I'm sort of in this moment sort of putting myself out there, if you have this sort of inclination to put yourself out there as well, I am hungry to learn as much from you as I hope you may learn from me, because this is a joint effort. We're all working on this journey, I think, together. So Outliers, those of you that are listening, follow James. We're going to have links on our website, outlierhq.com. That's outlierhq.com. First of all, subscribe to our podcast, rate, review it, share with your friends. But then we're going to have links to the websites, to the Facebook group. James, the Real Deal. 2019 is going to be amazing. Again, James, this is going to be fun. Not only do I enjoy our friendship, I enjoy the fact that you push me in ways that aren't always comfortable, but that's a good thing. And so, again, we're gonna follow you every step of the way. Outliers, we'll talk to you next week. Boom.